What's up, Moto Buddies? Mike here from Taco Moto Co. We have a 24 KTM 500 Exc-F here. And this is set up as an omnisport. This is really, a big bore all-arounder. This is kind of the spiritual successor of the XR 650. If Honda had continued to develop that and put R&D, time, money, and effort into it, I believe that what you'd end up with something is very similar to what the KTM 500 or the Husky 501 really have become, and that's the top shelf dual sport bike. And this is really an omnisport bike. This is something that you could take on a BDR trip, on a single night overnighter, on a weekend, on a week long, on a month long, on a year long. You ride this bike around the world. This is really the kind of platform with the proper setup for doing really any kind of riding, up into even track riding. Now, I know it's ridiculous, and it kind of is. I have a 501, a 24 501 that I've taken to the vet track at Paula, and for about 35 minutes ran a moto, and it was ridiculous and heavy, and this pig didn't fly that well. And I'm not look, full disclosure, I'm not a motocross rider. In fact, it was the first time I'd ever been on a motocross track, and I had to set the compression really high, and it looked probably ridiculous, and I was ridiculous, but I had a good time, and I did it. And my 501 now has done ultimate. It is the ultimate all sport bike. I've had it on a vet track at Paula. Like I said, I've done hard enduro in Baja. I've done hard enduro throughout the Southwest. It's done extended overnighters, BDRs. It did a BDR. It's done all kinds of things, and I think it just goes to show that the KTM 500, Husqvarna 501, even the Gas ES now 500, those really are the spiritual successors of what the Honda XR 650 may have become had Honda continued to put R&D, time and money and effort into it. These particular machines really represent what's capable and what's possible in the ultimate dual sport bike, light adventure bike. And we find that there's a lot of riders out there who this is the exact machine for almost all uses, where you used to have like an intermediate size ADV bike, a twin cylinder. So what would that be? That's a 10RA or KTM 790, 890. There's still use cases for that bike for sure. And even guys coming off GS, riders who had been previous owners and explorers on GS bikes, they just find, I think, that there's a lot of interest in having a bike that you can pick up on your own, that you can go out solo on, that you can cover some highway on, but not necessarily like a day slayer. So maybe you're not going to do 250, 300 miles on the highway. You only need to do 65 because you've got trails you need to connect. Well, this bike will do 65 miles on the highway, no problem. It's buzzy. All the things you hear about and read about are true. It's a single cylinder, big bore thumper. And that big slug in there makes some vibes, makes some vibrations. It's true, and there's just no way around it. That is one of the downside characteristics of a big bore single cylinder thumper. However, this is a bike you can pick up, like I said, on your own. This is a bike that will get you into the backcountry. It'll get you on single track. And I have an example here set up for a rider. This bike is going to go to a guy who will no doubt be using it in all those types of scenarios. Maybe not that vet track at Paula, but everything else, I'm sure. And I've had this for the last couple days here in the local Vegas area, exploring, looking for some new trails, doing single track, hardcore single track on it. Did some night riding the last few days. It's been 118 degrees here in Vegas, and so pretty ridiculously hot. And it's just not safe or smart to ride in the day when it's that hot. So we rode at night, and the light setup is great. This bike is just fantastic. I can't get enough. I laugh and smile every time I get on a bike that's set up like this. And we turn these out here at the taco shop. These are part of our build program. So let's run through this one. Now, we just did a very similar bike the other day. There was another video on it. This one is going to Texas to a rider. And let's look at some of the things that make maybe the two of these. Let's do a little comparison contrast, because you saw that one. let's talk about a few things on this one that might be a little bit unique or different, and explore what some of those differences are. Same tower, so this is the Taco Tower. This is a Yencro tower that's been adapted for tacomoto in some specific ways. And this one has a shorter screen than the other one. That other one had a tall, this has a short. So this one, you would be better off with this one if you're gonna do some single track riding with the lower screen height. You notice that my navigation phone sticks up, where on the other one it would have covered over the top of it. So I don't know, 5 or 6 more inches on the tall one. And so you'll have better wind protection on the other one, but you've got better usability for close work, tight type trail situations with this one. So everything's a trade-off. Same exact lights. They do great on wide open. You've got a wide low right here. This bottom one is a very, very flat, very wide low spread, very suitable for street use. And then the high is a single pencil beam spot and throws a light way down the trail. Front tire, same as the other one. So that's the Motoz Tractionator ST. I think that's an 80/90 size, 90/100 size, and 21 obviously on the front. Same rim setup. So this is the Warp 9, and that's the Elite series. So that's just a little more heavy duty than their other series. And I like the rotor. I like a drilled rotor as opposed to a wave rotor. I think it just looks a little bit more sort of old school Yamaha. I like that look. STR carbon fiber front guard, and then TM Design Works on that lower fork lug. These are about as light as you're gonna get and protect as good or better than anything else out there. And so, you know, you've heard me say this before, I'm all about unsprung weight, and this is the way to do that. The most protection for the least amount of weight. These are the Dingo racing fork guards. Those are really strong, stout plastic, and they protect against true rocks, true crash damage. And then fork shrinks up top there for a little bit of a cosmetic wrap. Speaking of wrap, the graphics, these are Tacomoto in-house design graphics, so we can create and then design and apply graphics to any of the build bikes. But also we ship these out too, and so you can hit us up if you need graphics on your bike. Tacomoto, the full flex signals right here. Now, interestingly, I tested with the headlight off to see how bright these were. They throw out enough light that I use those as a headlight. Now, that's, let me throw all kinds of asterisks about that. It's not safe. I didn't go fast. I went about 5 miles an hour. But I was shocked and surprised and pleased at how much light those, in fact, did throw off. I was able to ride in full black night with just those on, and I could see the ground. So I guess the point I'm making there is that just demonstrates how much light those throw out, and so it's a really dramatic safety feature, and we're really pleased with those. Notice, because of the tower here, and we don't want that cable, so our clutch hose, our brake hose, and then our speedo line, there is a problem when you add features and components like this up top, that brake line would loop over. And so what are some of the ways that I've handled that in the past? Well, one way is I've made custom lines that go way up and over, and then that becomes a hazard, because now you have this really big loop, and it's just kind of rubbing and wearing away on things. And we have found that the best option is to just run this like we have it here, and we bring it under, we secure it, and then we secure it again here along the fork tubes, and then it flexes out here Yamaha style. And that's just worked out really, really well for us, and it cleans up the cockpit, and you don't have the hose interfering with anything. And so now you can do something like this, where this is a Garmin XT on a powered mount, and then we have a phone up here. This is my preferred. People will email in and ask us, or I'll see people at events, what's our preferred method for navigation? Well, it is now essentially an Android phone. So this is maybe a Kyocera Duraforce Pro or something else. I don't know what kind of phone this is. We use this is like a rugged construction site phone, sort of a military spec phone. And then we'll put a Peak Designs. This is Peak Designs, and this has a isolation, so it's a rubber dampened mount. And so with that, look how easy and quick that just pops on. Absolutely super rugged. And then it's, you know, got the vibration in there, but do we need the vibration? Probably not, because these are just kind of disposable phones. And, you know, if you don't have some sort of vibration dampening, it's very likely going to kill your, kill the camera. You know, you've read about how rigid mounting a phone to a bike will kill the camera, and that's probably true. I haven't done that because I don't mount nice phones to bikes. I use these little phones, like I said, and then run like Gaia and on X, those apps. That's primary navigation. I've got an XT on here, or the rider has an XT. I threw mine on here, and I like having two. This is a backup, but this is a primary. Run that as a primary. And then he's got another one over here, and so he's going to have two phones or 3 devices in total. And that bar configuration with his tower allows him to be able to accommodate all those devices, and that's a really cool way to go. Astra on the bars, we like the bend, we like the there's some nice compliance here with those bars. And then speaking of compliance, the bar guard system here, this is a Reflex Racing. This is my preferred on my own personal bike. I run this, and the reason is because there's a steel belted, it's not a tire, but there's a steel braided cable right here, and that allows for complete flex of the bar system out here at the ends as the bars are moving. There's no rigidity that's introduced into the bar, and so you're able to get all of that all that flex out of there. And the other thing is, it doesn't matter what your bar bend is. I don't know if you've ever tried to install a hard mount system, hard bar guard, bark buster type system, and you had to put your guards in a vise and tweak them and twist them to get them to adapt to maybe a unique bar bend. That is no longer the case. It is never a problem. You can mount this, and we have, to just about every type of bar and bend out there, and you never have an issue, because this extends out so that dimension changes, and then your angle of attack changes. So absolute problem solver, super light, very strong, very durable, and no rigidity introduced into the bar system. So that's my personal favorite. And then the mirrors, the other bike we had, the highway dirt bikes, nothing is stronger than the highway dirt bikes, but there's a bit of a weight penalty, there's some rigidity there, and the mirrors that fold out, while very clever, are nowhere near as good and safe as the double take mirror set. So those are little Street Fighter style mirrors, and when you want to be in a minimalist mode, you can run those, and those are going to be okay. But if you absolutely want to have like true rear visibility and ultimate safety, you just need to do a double mirror system that are large and then mounted up high like this. And so this is my preferred system. Double Take has got this new version that they just came out with in the summer here of 2024. And then if you've never seen these, you just loosen the knob, and then you can take and, you know, wherever you find to be a good little pocket, but you can just fold those in and then lock them down. And that's what I use on my bike. All my personal bikes have this. OD Rogue on the grips. These are my personally preferred grips, and I run these on all my bikes as well. Super duper squishy. I like that they come in different colors. That's a great grip system, and they're lock-on. So there's a screw there. There's no glue. There's no fussiness with that. You don't have to wire them. They are really great. This bike has something interesting. He's got a recluse left-hand brake system. So this allows you to brake like a mountain bike, and I love it. Have a great time when you're on some technical single track where you want the finesse of being able to modulate the rear brake by hand. Your finger finesse on that rear brake is way more accurate than your big fat foot stabbing at that brake pedal over here on the right hand side. And if you really want to up your single track game, or you're in a situation, maybe you're doing some Idaho side hill stuff, some side hill of great concern, and you're in a situation where you need to have your right foot against a rock or against a ledge, and you've got death over here on the left side, and you have to do two things with your right foot. You need to control the brake and balance yourself. It may be impossible to do, and I've been in lots of situations in Idaho where it's a real pucker factor of 10. But if you've got the ability now to control the rear brake and finesse it. So you gain two things. You gain the ability to control the rear brake in a situation like that, because your left hand is going to be at the ready, and then to have that finesse. So it's a really elevated type of system for that type of rider in those types of situations. Now, somebody will say, well, how do you control the rear brake if you need to like lock it up in a parking brake? So let me throw one other thing. There's a Recluse 4.0 clutch on this bike. And so that's an automatic clutch, which means that you will freewheel the rear end if you're in neutral. There is no direct connection when the engine is off, and there's no centrifugal force in the clutch between the rear wheel and then the compression stopping forces of the engine in gear, engine off. So I keep a little Velcro strap with me. And so if I ever needed a moment where I had to maybe stop or park the bike and have it stop on its own while I walk forward and look at a line, I keep a little Velcro strap and I just throw that around and I Velcro that. So there's always a workaround. And then I've been asked, well, what do you do if you have to bump start your bike because you have this freewheeling clutch? You can get in here with a 4mm Allen wrench onto that nut and you can turn that out. So I can turn this Recluse into a manual clutch based on what I'm doing with that screw right there. So there's workarounds for all these types of situations, but that's an absolute clutch setup, killer setup. Scott stabilizer up here, and then the BRP on the damping system for the bar mounts. And they do a good job. On my personal bikes, I run the Mako 360 because that's a step up in terms of vibration damping. This is a good system. It's super reliable. It's been around for a long time. Very stout, very crash proof. Not that the other isn't, but this is the go-to for a lot of riders. And they come in two damper, the softness. This is the more rigid one, and then they have a blue one, which is a little bit softer. And on my, I've run this system before, and on mine, when I do it, I run the blue. I like a softer in there. Maybe I should point out that we have drilled in and tapped on the bar ends here and have the Fast Flex company vibration brass damping inserts. So a lot of things are going on this bike to give the rider a lot of comfort, a lot of flexibility, and a lot of usability. Keep them on the bike for as long as possible for those long duration days. Get ECU system with traction control, map 2. So I just spent a lot of great time on this bike playing around with map 1 and map 2. And map 2 is an absolute game changer for single track use. And then you throw on traction control and you can just climb up telephone poles and mountains and loose gravel hill climbs. It's fantastic. And then you've got quick shifter on here, which is a real blast. So fun to just click up through the gears, click up and down through the gears. You don't even touch the clutch. So all of these things work together to make this machine not only more fun, but like I said, way more usable and rider friendly, energy conservation. So much of this bike is clued into what's going on with the rider and keeping him on the bike for long days. Tacomoto right hand start kill switch, and then double take mirrors again. We talked about that. That might wrap up everything up on the top. The Cherubies, that's the 3.9, 4.0, 4-gallon gas tank. That's enough fuel to get you hopefully where you're going. And then the Taco Snorkel, if that was installed on this bike, it would, and so we have that on a couple of prototype test bikes, and we're making a slight design change. So that product is coming. It exists. It's on bikes. It's out there getting miles on it. We're just making a bit of a design mod, and so that's pushed the release time back just a wee bit, but that's coming. And so that would allow you to draw and drink all the way down from the very bottom of that tank, and we have tested that and it works tremendously well. Golon oil filter, P3 Racing, the frame guards there, Tacomoto oil filter, dirt tricks on the dome washer, Pro Moto Billet foot pegs with the air extend safety peg, and then bulletproof designs on that lever. The Cherubies on the fork guards, that's a dirt tricks Ironman rear washer. Down there we have bulletproof on the adjuster block, and then we have a non The other bike had a cush drive. This one is a non-cush drive. And this drive line hits a little harder. It punches a little harder, a little snappier because it doesn't have that cush drive. But they've saved a little weight, and this is a little less costly. So there's some of the thoughts behind that. Notice on the rear tire, you got the Moose lube that's been oozing out. That is completely and perfectly normal and natural when you run a Moose. That lube will just work its way out, and you'll, for the first bit of the ride, until that sort of eases out, you'll see that bleeding out. Again, very normal, and it'll spray up here and you'll get it underneath the underside of your fender. No big deal. That's what it does. Oh, BRP on the chain slider there. That's a nice little upgrade item. Enduro plate, tidy tail. I've talked about those many times. Seat concepts. This is the wide. Very, very comfortable. Very nice if you're doing sitting sections. We have the stock muffler with a Pro Mobility end cap, and then this is a new line that we're coming out with. The sun's not quite getting it just right. Let's go to this side. You can see that is a really cool red. I hadn't put those 2 screws in. They didn't fall out. I didn't put those in out of a little bit of laziness, just throwing that on to be quick about it. So this is Cerakoted. This is a high temp, no fade Cerakote, and then this has been Cerakoted as well. And this is the new version. So it's sort of the 2.0 version of the Pro Mobility end cap, where it is lightened. It is lighter than the previous generation, and then Tacomoto is going to have our own series of these that have this Cerakote treatment, and you can mix and match the colors. We got a lot of colors, like Honda, burnt bronze, magnesium, titanium, gunmetal gray, a couple versions of black, red, purple. I think we're going to do yellow, green, orange, just really cool, vibrant, bright colors, and you can mix and match. You could go 2 blacks, you could go 2 reds, you could go blue and red, gold and purple. It's up to you. You'll order them a la carte off the site, and they look pretty wicked awesome. Counterweighted on the so Warp 9 rim lock, and then counterweighted, and then this is a Intech solid rear rotor. This is what you'd see on a 6 days bike, and that the purpose of a solid rear rotor is to eliminate mud that would potentially fill up the holes or the wave, and then that mud would then supersaturate those pads and would accelerate the wear of the pads. So you'll have longer service life with a rear rotor in muddy situations if it's a solid versus a wave or a cross drilled. So that's what's going on with that. Plus it has a unique look, kind of changes the look of the rear end, and there's some riders who just like it for that reason alone, and that's perfectly acceptable. On the rear shock, all the suspension here, front and rear, has been taco tuned in-house with our suspension program, and then we put we've got a X-Trig. So this allows you to change your ride height, your sag really quickly with a 8mm wrench. And so if you're going to run some bags, put them on, take them off, you can do that really quickly. And then there's these little notches here on this post, and you could maybe take a Sharpie pen and mark where you could have a couple of different marks. And so, if you've got a full ride kit, a full turnout, and then you'd set it to a certain spot. And then if you didn't have any bags, you'd set that to another spot. And so it allows you the ability to quickly change your sag settings. And then we've got the heat shielding insulation on the muffler here that will keep that heat out of the shock and extend the service life of the shock oil and eliminate some of the fade that can happen. Recluse 4.0, we talked about that. Molecule skid plate, P3 Racing on the exhaust shield, Tacomoto oil cap, Samco hoses, thermostat retained. We talked about the thermostat on the last video. We never remove the thermostat on any of our bikes. Almost in all instances, it's a bad idea. We don't do it. And then we have a heat shield here over the radiator hose that protects the hose against the very close proximity of that very hot exhaust manifold. Bulletproof on the brake lever here, and an oversized tip with some really gnarly cool pins there for very aggressive action on your foot and your boot. Sticks really well. Acerbis X Mud, these have eliminated for us blown fork seals. We just don't blow fork seals anymore. In fact, we change seals on a routine basis, which is a smart thing to do as part of your suspension maintenance cycle. And then we change our oil in our suspension, but we just don't blow seals. We don't have oil leaks, all thanks to the X-Mud. I think we talked about the seat. Under the seat, we have an upgraded battery. That's probably an anti-gravity 8-cell in there. And then inside the airbox, that is a PC Racing filter skin over the filter. And we keep those with us, oiled in a bag, so that we could change those out on the ride. And then PC Racing base gasket. And very likely we have the twin air filter cage in that bike. So really quick, a couple of myths out there as far as air filter goes in that area in the airbox. The reeds are removed on these 24s. They have a very high likelihood of popping out, and we get messages from riders quite often where they will say, my bike won't rev out. I can only go like, X miles an hour. I have very low power, just all types of symptoms that just sound like, if that sounds like a rag, if you've ever worked on your bike and accidentally left a rag stuffed in the intake, that's what that sounds like. And that's similar to what's happening. Those reeds have had a tendency to pop out and then they get sucked back in backwards, and which effectively just absolutely restricts out and almost closes off entirely the airflow. And that's what's happened. And so we advocate for, in lots of instances, removing the reeds for that reason. They become problematic. And there is a benefit, and we have a video that talks about there is an actual benefit to having reeds in an intake on a 4-stroke, but there's some downsides too. And so we're experiencing those downsides. So removal is very likely a good idea. So some of the myths are that you need to then install some type of tube to keep the air boot from collapsing in on itself. That's 100% myth. That is not true. That rubber boot is very capable of maintaining its own shape. It would be ridiculous. What a product liability that if removing those reeds caused the intake boot to collapse on itself. That's not a thing. That's a myth. Another myth out there is that if you cut out or put in a screenless air filter cage, that you'll gain some power. That's a myth. There's no power to be gained. It's placebo power. And if that helps you believe that your bike's faster and rides better, then I am not gonna talk you out of that. Look, I do things to my bike that I believe make me a better rider. I put on pieces, I do graphics, I do things that give me self-confidence as a rider, that make my experience more satisfying and more fun, which may have the psychological effect of making me truly a better rider. So I'm not gonna step in and disabuse you of any of those hopes or dreams or beliefs, but the reality is there is no gain. There's no actual gain from doing that, but you can do it if you like it. And we like the twin air filter cage because it's aluminum, it's billet. And so there's never going to be any flex. You have 100% assurity that your air filter is meeting up with your air filter, the body of the air filter, on the bike side, accurately and correctly. And so that's a benefit. There's also on these bikes, there's little air blocks. And so you can see right here, can't quite get my finger in there, but there's a little oval piece here. There's an oval piece there, and there's one up here on the top, and you have that this on the other side. And so some riders, and this is an actual thing, some riders who are doing a lot of wide open riding will pop those things out, and that just encourages more air volume, more and easier air. So with this in, air is being sucked in, obviously, but it's making its way past little areas under the seat and otherwise into the airbox. And it is not, I'm not going to use the word restrictive, but let's say that if you remove those, it's less restrictive. It's free breathing, free flowing. And so we leave those in because like on my bikes, I'm not setting them up for wide open speed, speed machine. But who would remove that? A supermoto guy, a wide open desert racer guy, if you're going to set up a Baja 1000 race bike, which we have done and are doing one right now, those will get popped out. So there are some riders who that will be a benefit to, but generally for most sports riders, leave that in, and we do as well. I'm just kind of scanning around. I think that's probably it. Maybe to finalize, I'm looking at the trickle charger. We add the trickle charger here, and that becomes part of our our enduro harness that we have, and then we put a ground strap on the engine. So the engine, strangely enough, KTM doesn't, none of the Austrian single cylinder bikes ground the engine. So we have a ground strap to the engine. We have power accessories that go up here into the tower. We just have a lot of upfits for the electrical system. We move the horn, we relocate that down here to the engine case. So maybe that's a wrap. This is a really rad bike. I've enjoyed it. Thanks to the rider for letting me go out and experience some night riding on it here the last couple days. It's completely sorted. Its sea trails are done. This thing is ready to get on a courier. So we use Alan's transport in many instances, and he runs bikes across the country. So we're in Vegas. We sourced this bike for the rider, secured the purchase, got it to Vegas, got it to the taco shop, broke it in on the dyno, have done all the trials. It's ready to go. I'm gonna go wash it, detail it, and then it's gonna go on a truck and go to Texas. So we can work with riders wherever you are. We're not geographically, limited. We can transport bikes, we can get them to us and then get them back out to you wherever you live. We have riders that we work with who are overseas as well, and there's if the desire's there, then there is a way to make it happen. So you can reach out to us anytime if you have any questions about this bike or anything else that we've got going on at the Taco Shop. Please do. You can shoot us a call, a text, or an email. All that information will be in the links below. And thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, go out, get some adventure.